Let me out into the sunlight now, and it's a real joy to invite you back and welcome you back. The main excitement coming up is, of course, Professor Smith, who will be preaching to us shortly from the lectern, I believe, or maybe from behind the altar, I'm not sure. But first of all, I just wanted to share with you that one of the most wonderful things, among many wonderful things, about being head of Hertford College, being principal of Hertford College, as Sir Walter knows much better than me, is that every year there is an anniversary. And this year's anniversary, among several, is the 100th anniversary of Evelyn Waugh arriving at Hertford College in January 1922. And so I've been thinking a bit about what was the college like when Waugh was here. He would have sat in this chapel. I don't know where he would have been on his religious journey at that point, but almost certainly he would have sat in this chapel. Probably at the time, it would have been known as the New Chapel. It would have been less than 20 years old at the time in its current incarnation. Evelyn Waugh famously did no work at Hertford, unlike all of you, of course, who were models. Check the record. And you were models of academic distinction. He did no work at all, I think it's fair to say, and left with what some of you may recall was once called a gentleman's third. But I think his results were so bad that I don't think he even actually picked up his degree. Waugh, while he was here, as I say, spent very little time in the library, but he did form a society called the Hypocrites, which one naughty undergraduate asked me the other day, whether that was the originator of the governing body. It certainly was not anything to do with our governing body. So he set up the Hypocrites. As I say, he did very, very little work while he was here. And I think the main mark that he left on Hertford was that he had a huge falling out with his tutor and later Principal Crutwell, who you'll remember from the hall, that far left-hand end of the hall, looking down on the students. And Waugh had clearly a very fractious relationship with his history tutor and then Principal Crutters, which I try to discourage this generation of undergraduates from emulating. If there's one thing they should learn from Evelyn Waugh, it's not to fall out with your principal. But so he would have sat here, and he would have been here in the shadow, of course, of the Great War. He would have arrived and looked at the list of 171 names. There would have been students and dons here who would have shared in that first 2-minute silence for Percy Fitzpatrick in 1917, which then became the model for the 2-minute silence nationally. And what would Waugh have made of how the college has changed since his time here? I wondered the other day what he would have made of our current plans, our 4 aspirations for Hertford College. I think he would have approved of the fact that we want to do great teaching. We want to preserve the magic that you experienced of the Oxford tutorial. He might say something caustic about his experience in those tutorials with the famous Crutwell, but he would want to preserve the magic of that interaction between tutor and student. I think he would also want to encourage us to continue to do extraordinary research. And I wonder now, who is writing the books at Hertford that we will remember in 100 years' time? One of those people is, of course, Emma. So he would want us to really focus, I think, on that extraordinary research, and that's right at the heart of our plans for the period ahead. I think he would approve of what we're doing to try to develop students beyond just their academic work. And I often think of Waugh and Crutwell when I'm debating with students, when I'm encouraging that spirit of challenge and skepticism and free speech, and this sense that you can change your mind and that you can be exposed to views that you don't agree with, and you've got to win the argument and be in the argument. I think Waugh would approve of that wider development of our students. I think Waugh would heartily disapprove of our aspirations around access. He would be perplexed about our aspirations around going carbon neutral on climate, and being this place that really opens up Oxford to the wider world. I think as a man of his class and his time, he would find that mystifying. And of course, I would say that he was very wrong in that respect. One thing that Waugh might recognise would be the buildings. So Waugh described Hertford in his letters as a dreary, drab, cramped place. And when we invited him back years later to give a speech after he became so renowned, he said, "I can't make the trip to Oxford because the trains are so bad, it's easier to get to the Amazon than it is to get back to Hertford College." So he sent us a fine case of claret, apparently, which we would still very much approve of. But probably he would look around and comment that many of our buildings, many of our rooms are still a bit cramped, are still a bit drab, and aren't yet the kind of space that we want to create for our students to live and study and work and thrive and develop in. So I hope that if he was here, he would heartily approve of the fact that we are talking to you about the development of our new library, which will be very much the centerpiece of our plans for the coming period. And Emma will talk a little bit more about what that will mean to this generation of students. Just a final thought. I often, when I sit here in the chapel, I reflect on my personal journey in this college. You know, like you, I was a student here, and at some point, I intend, if I haven't been thrown out for any misdemeanor, to have my funeral here. This, to me, is coming back to the heart, the HQ for me, and I feel very much that for all its strengths and weaknesses, and for all my many weaknesses, that Hertford has somehow shaped my life and shaped me as a person. And I know from talking to many of you that that's how you feel about Hertford as well. This is a place that has shaped all of us, that has made us in different ways. It made Evelyn Waugh, for better or for worse, into the person that he was. And so I hope that we can also reflect today on what this place will look like when we celebrate, and we won't all be here, but the celebration of the 100th anniversary of this year's students. You know, that group that arrived, that were educated during lockdowns, that have arrived here with the shadow of the pandemic over them and with the shadow of climate change ahead of them. This year's students will be my age in 2050, which is a very sobering thought when you look at the world that we are leaving them. So what will they be thinking? What will we be saying about Hertford in 100 years' time? Well, a lot of that really does depend on us. And when I say us, I don't just mean Emma and Fran and me and the team here and the work that we're doing to shape those young people. It really depends on us, as in this group here. And so today is our chance to say a huge thank you for the support you are giving us, the solidarity, the financial support that you are giving us already, and to encourage you too to think, what more can we do now to ensure that in 100 years' time, Hertford is giving that same experience to future students, is continuing to shape future generations of students. You can do that in all sorts of ways. You're all already doing it through the legacies that you have pledged. Many of you are already doing it through the gifts that you are giving. And now with this library campaign, we hope there are other opportunities to support. You know, for example, every seat in the library, we hope will have an individual donor who will support that seat for £1,000 and can do something there that is a genuine legacy within our lifetimes. I'll certainly be doing that. And so I encourage you to listen carefully and look at the literature we have and reflect on how we can all be the best possible ancestors for future students at Hertford. I always promise you at these things that I will never ask you for any money, and I'm almost getting close to that point. But given that this is a day for camaraderie and solidarity and nostalgia, and also that we're in the chapel, and I know there's a fine tradition of people asking for money in churches, but I think I should probably stop there and hand you over to Professor Emma Smith, who is one of the academics who is really, of whom we're most proud at Hertford, and I hope that you have all read This is Shakespeare. I hope you're all following her work closely. Emma she has several lofty positions at the college. She's the fellow archivist So oversees everything that you've seen through there. The sorts of books that were here for hundreds of years before war. She's a fellow librarian, and so oversees the entire library project. She runs the mysterious Works of Art Committee, which is so powerful that I'm not allowed to be on it. So I suspect that's where all the real decisions in college are taken. And Emma is also the pro-principal, so governing body asked Emma to be pro-principal in order to lead this talismanic, vital library campaign. The fact that she's pro-principal doesn't mean that there's an amateur principal in the building as well. But as part of that role, Emma's job is to mentor me and guide me and develop me in this role too, like a young Evelyn Waugh with no, not Principal Crutwell, actually. That's probably anyway. That is more than enough from me. I'm at risk of upsetting you in the way that Crutwell did upset Waugh. So let me hand you over now to Emma.